Welcome along to the Rock and Goal podcast, the official podcast of Dumbarton Football Club. My name is Fraser Clark, and once again I'm joined by Chris McMillan and Jack Crawford to reflect on a month that's brought highs, lows and a lot of watching of the weather forecast. We also have a very special guest joining us today. He's the last man to lead Dumbarton to a league title. He was the gaffer for the team that got me hooked, and he therefore has quite a lot to answer for. But first we'll reflect on a month or so since our last podcast, which was before the 2-1 victory over Annan Athletic. That was a great result on a dodgy pitch, and Stevie Farrell said afterwards a pretty terrible performance, Jack.
It was one of the ugliest wins we've had this season. I think there's been a few of them, but that one must be right up there. Even the goals, the first goal in particular, going from back to finish with one back to front with one kick was pretty impressive. But it's the games you look back at the end of the season, you're like, that was a really good 3 points that day. We weren't at our best, but maybe said it in the last podcast, but coming through games like that at the end of the season, you look back at that kind of got us over the line.
Why, if there's problems with the pitch, why bother playing on it? Just get Brett Long to punt it up, it'll take one bounce and Ryan Wallace will stick it in the net.
Hope Brett Long's been watching those highlights. I don't know if there are highlights actually, but yeah, it feels like it's been about a month since the last game in general, to be fair. But you mentioned there about that Annan win not being the best but being very significant. I'd written that down as well. It did feel like a very significant result, and the way that it came about as well. Like, it wasn't a great performance. The goal that Tommy Goss scored came from it was like 3 defensive errors in one, kind of, wasn't it? And it came, but yeah, the winner and the way that it came about, it felt like a really big moment in the season, in the title race. Unfortunately, yeah, unless you were here, no one's ever going to be able to see that goal ever again.
No,
which is a shame, because it could be a really big moment.
Pixel let us down big time for that, and let Russell McLean down for that. But one thing that I wanted to touch on was, in that game, especially in the second half, Dumbarton were well under the cosh, and Stevie Farrell made a switch, and he switched to 4-4-2, and that was a kind of, Suns maybe could have tried to sit, contain and take the point, and he switched to the 4-4-2.
I think he'd done that in the game before, hadn't he?
Yeah.
Contained, and it didn't pay off.
And it didn't pay off against Stenhousemuir, and it was almost like he'd learnt from that and went the opposite way, went to 4-4-2. Russell McLean scored a tremendous, you'll have to take our word for it, or ask the big man, because he'll tell you it was great, but he scored a tremendous winning goal in it, and that felt like the reward, and that almost felt like a bit of a change, I don't know, just in the whole mood around the place.
Yeah, I think so too. And when you make a change like that in that game, going attacking, chasing the 3 points, not taking a point, it can change the whole mood of the crowd. I think when that decision, when Stevie Farrell made that decision to make those changes, I think we looked at each other in the commentary area and we were just like, okay. But everyone in the crowd would have done that as well. I think you kind of felt that at the time. Managers
very much sort of live and die by their decisions as well, and it's, you have to have the balls to be brave enough to go for it, and in that game Faz did. And do you think that almost won him a wee bit more respect? We were talking in the last one about the crowd maybe being on his back. He's still got a lot of critics to win over. He's got a meet the manager session which will be going on as we record this, so that might help him as well, but that maybe earned him a wee bit more, I don't know if respect is the word, or just got the fans on side a little bit more.
We did, because I think last time we sat here and we said, when's he going to go 2 up top, because obviously the infamous game at Stirling was last time we went for it, prior to that. So I think it did buy a bit, maybe not bottom time, because I don't think he was ever in danger of not losing his job or anything, but I think it got some fans back in the side, definitely.
So when you've got those options as well, like you've brought Russell McLean in, like Declan Byrne is getting back to full fitness, like you do have those options. It's not like you're forcing it out of nowhere, and maybe shoving. I was going to say Ross McLean, that's harsh because he can play up front, but like you're not kind of trying to force that wave at the top of the pitch. You do have those natural strikers at your disposal.
We'll talk a wee bit about it, but obviously there was that clamour for 4-4-2, and we said, well, the 4-1-4-1's working, but when you've got Ryan Wallace, you've got Declan Byrne, you've got Russell McLean, you've got options there.
You can change it.
You can change it and go 4-4-2. Now, these Fife game I'll touch on very briefly, mainly because I'd actually forgotten about it up until we were going through the list of the games that we had to talk about here, and it was rubbish. Suns lost, it was 2-0 in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, they scored late at the end.
Yeah, I mean, see, I've completely wiped this from my memory. And in that game, after East Fife took the lead, Suns really pushed everything at it, but seemed to almost lose sight of what they're good at, which was that structure.
I think if we're still playing in now, we wouldn't have scored yet. You've had plenty of the ball, we just had... There was no final pass that day for whatever reason. Maybe you have to give East Fife back credit for that, but just we couldn't find that final ball, the cross, whatever it was. I think we started well in that game. That's the only thing I remember. I think we should have scored twice in the first 15 minutes, but as soon as they took the lead from the corner that wasn't, I remember that. We just never got back in the game at all, and just lacked that killer pass.
We're not going to touch too much on that East Fife game because I've slightly forgotten about it, stroke erased it.
And the next one's not much better.
We will talk about the Elgin game where Stevie Farrell went 4-4-2. I think that we looked at it and in the team lineup, I'm like, yes, let's bring that. And it turned out to be probably the worst performance of the season.
Yeah, everyone fancied that lineup when it came out, didn't they? I certainly did as well, yeah, but that was a nightmare. That you talk about maybe not quite getting the final ball up at East Fife, and nothing went right this day. Nothing at all. It was everything you don't want to see from your side when they're at the top of the league, when they need to get results. And I think I said to you at the time, and I'll stick by it, on that day I think Suns looked like a team that were frightened of being chased, and that was the first time they, for me personally, and I think everybody knows, like, I'm not a die in the wool fan like you, but that was the first time when I was really thinking, whoa, this side looks like they might get caught here. And Elgin played well here earlier on in the season, and they came in and did the same thing as well. I think the difference being is that wasn't a performance where, the final ball wasn't quite good enough, or maybe just should have scored but didn't take the chance or whatever. It was just poor.
Elgin wanted it a lot more that day for whatever reason, and that's one thing you could probably say about Dumbarton this season, that hasn't happened enough times. And I think Stevie Farrell came out and said that quite openly after the game. He's not really got in the back of his players this season. He's not had a reason to, but when he's had to, he has. And that day, Elgin just first to every ball, first to every tackle. They wanted it a lot more. I think when going into the game, Elgin they were the team in the worst form in the division. So
they were.
When you seen the lineup, you fancied if it's a game to go 4-4-2, then this is probably the perfect chance against a team that's lacking in confidence, lacking in form. But especially Kane Hester, he tore us apart that day.
And another thing that worried me is the Ryan Blair goal. It came out of nowhere, but it was at an ideal time just before half time, and you think, right, okay, you've
got away with this.
Exactly, you've got away with that bad first half performance. But then there was no answer to that. There was no improvement in the second half, which I found particularly worrying.
My kind of or major takeaway from that, and since then their form has been dreadful as well, is I cannot understand why Elgin are doing so poorly. But what I would say is they dominated that game. They should have won that game 3-0, 4-0 would have been, that was as one-sided as the game up at Boroughbriggs in November was in Sun's favour.
They wouldn't have had an easier away game all season, probably.
No, but they only won it 2-1 with a penalty that was gifted to them. Is that maybe why Elgin aren't climbing the table?
I actually forgot about that mistake until you brought that up as well.
Speaking of getting away from it, we should have got away with that. We made a dreadful mistake, and Hester went through and hit the post, and then obviously we're not going to name out individuals, but there was a few of them that could have done better in that instance. You think you get away with a missed chance, and then to gift them the penalty, it was defending that we've seen in the past.
But I mean, you've got a point there. The penalty comes from a, quite frankly, ridiculous situation, a mistake that a defender's probably going to make once in their career. An error of that sort of style, if you like. Do you know what I mean? It's a very, very weird situation.
It was a freak sort of penalty to concede. And also, I would say, having seen the zoomed in replay, I'm not actually sure how much of a touch Gregor Buchanan makes on Mitchell Taylor, but I feel like the whole situation between Buckett and between Brett Long, conceding a penalty was probably deserved.
I know what you mean.
The punishment maybe didn't fit the crime in a literal sense, but it did fit the crime in terms of, like, that was one, you've got off, it's hit the post, put it in the stand, put it in the leaving, put it anywhere. Don't dilly-dally and don't give Elgin a chance there. And like we said, Suns getting level at half-time when they maybe didn't deserve to be, and then they went and chucked it away. And it's just that game management thing that's been so good all season completely deserted them.
Do you remember the quote that you said to me in commentary at the time?
Was it to do with Neil Warnock and they've never scored from the stand?
That's the one.
I almost said it again there, but I didn't want people thinking that my patter was repetitive.
But the thing is that, like, that moment I am sure would have gone in super slow motion in Gregor Buchanan's head as well. And
in slow motion watching it.
He wouldn't have been able to describe what happened. And yeah, you're right, maybe that is the reason why Elgin are struggling. Like, they came away to top of the league, they dominated, they played really well, but they needed an outrageous sort of fluke of a mistake to help them win the game.
Which is strange when you think they've got probably the best strikes in division up top. You'd think they'd have that killer touch, but for these it's kind of lacked on this season.
Something that just kind of popped into my head as well. So we're recording this before Dumbarton play Albion Rovers, who of course have Charlie Riley. Now, you're probably your three best attacking players in the division: Tommy Goss, Charlie Riley, and Kane Hester. $1 million question for all of you. You can pick one in this Dumbarton team. You can take a minute to think about it, whilst I think about it to myself. Now, I am an enormous fan of Kane Hester, and I said it, I think, to both of you after the game, that he played every role of a striker. Like, he held play up, he ran the channels, he was a goal threat, he linked play, he did his defensive duty, he pressed defenders. He literally was a complete striker. Everything he did.
I mean, you've just made my mind up for me right
was
there.
Superb. But I think I'd pick Charlie Riley.
So would
because
I.
I think Charlie Riley's the sort of player that I would pay money to watch.
The only
Let's
reason
not talk him up too much.
the only reason I was thinking I would rather not Riley was, and I only saw him here in that game, but after an hour he was done. If Riley could play 90 minutes, I'm on with you. But in this Suns team right now, I take Hester, I think.
And nobody's taken Tommy Goss, who is the top scorer in the division, I think.
I wouldn't say no, but
No. I think just from like I said, you made my mind up there for everything that Hester brings, I think as well. And I'm not slating any of the Suns forwards this season, but there's not a high amount of goals there.
no.
And for
Which
everything,
has its positives as well.
yeah, it does as well. The goals have been spread around the team. It's not a worrying situation. But I think in the system that Suns play, this 4-1-4-1, if you've got a Hester up top who's, buzzing around and causing all those problems, dragging defenders out wide, running down the channels, just doing everything that you just mentioned, that's why I would take him. But fully fit Riley is... I'm very interested to see where he goes in the summer.
I was going to say, I'm excited to see where he ends up, because I think he could go on to play at a very, very good level. I love the way he strikes the ball. I was reading an interview with him where he said that he hadn't really played in the wing until he moved to Albion Rovers, but he just loves taking players on, and I love that from a winger. Like, he just wants to skin people, and that's great. Like, that's fantastic.
I've got the stat for you here that we were trying to figure out in the last podcast, right? So obviously a few games have passed, and I was looking it up because it is Albion Rovers at home today, but Charlie Riley, 18 league goals, 7 league assists, 25 goal involvements out of Rovers' 32 league goals, which is just over 78%.
I don't think even David Goodwillie at Clyde would have anything up that. I mean, I'm quite happy for a Clyde fan to message me on Twitter and let me know, but I feel like that must be exceeding David Goodwillie's impact at Clyde.
Yeah, and I feel bad for saying, I'm excited to see where he goes in the summer. Imagine being an Albion Rovers fan when that tweet comes out saying Charlie Riley is left.
But he's
what kind of deal is he on there? Is he on a one?
I think he's up in the summer, but they will get a development fee for him because of his age. Now, I wonder as well, he's a once in a generation for an Albion Rovers fan sort of player. Like, every so often, maybe every 15 years, clubs like us, like Albion Rovers, will get a player like that. And I imagine there'll be a wee bit of pride. Like, I think if I was an Albion Rovers fan, and if I say he goes to, I think Dundee had been linked to a club like that, he goes to Dundee, maybe they're in the Premiership next season, and he has an impact, I would watch that. Like, I watched Stuart Finlay like a sort of proud dad. Like players who've been at the club and have gone on, and I think we all do that. Like, I was, when Chris Kane was playing for St Johnstone and they were winning everything, like, I was so proud of him. Like, I remember your first senior goal, look at you now, son.
Yeah,
Jake Lindsay as well was one I like looking out for down south. The guys that go down south, you always look out for.
When Che Adams played for Scotland, and I was there. I saw his first goal. So I've seen him, but you mentioned Dundee. I wondered maybe whether Thistle would be interested in bringing him back. But
he seems like he would be a good fit at Thistle.
Yeah, but they are quite well stacked out wide as well. If he was going to continue in the left wing position. We're probably getting a bit sidetracked.
The Charlie Riley fan podcast. So you'll come in now, and we're just going to be stood kind of in awe, and I'll have my autograph book out, just like, you remember me when you're famous.
Well, as long as he has a shocking afternoon today, so
he'll score.
Yeah.
Or he'll assist.
Well, you picked out those strikers. Remember, Suns only conceded 7 goals at home all season.
Yep.
And Riley scored, Goss, Hester, basically all the top scorers in the league apart from Carrick.
There's still time.
Yeah, I've found the net here as well, so it takes a good player to hit the net in Dumbarton at the moment. Speaking
of top players in the league, that sort of brings us on to a guy who's maybe been a bit more under the radar than the big three, if you will, and that's Matty Yates at Steny. Now, that Dumbarton Stenhousemuir game, coming on the back of the Elgin game, I think there was a real... is trepidation the right word? It was how would Dumbarton respond to this? And I was talking to Craig Telfer last week, and he said he couldn't believe how downbeat the Dumbarton fans were coming in. So he was stood at the turnstile coming in, and he was like, I kind of expected it would be like when you go to see a club at the top of the league. He's like, everybody I spoke to was like, nah, we're going to get pumped today. the general mood was like exceptionally low, and Dumbarton turned in one of their best performances at home of the season.
At both ends of the park were brilliant. It was unlucky to only be 1-0 that day. We talked a lot about Faz kind of winning some fans back with the Annan game. I think the Elgin game, we probably lost those fans that he'd won back, so to respond in the manner it was against Stenhousemuir, who again were coming into that game on the back of some decent results. It was a really impressive performance, and they're unlucky to win that 1-0.
What a massive part of that was Declan Byrne being back, and we've spoken about Sun's problems up front. Problems is probably too strong a word, but certainly the lack of maybe a player who suits the style of football that Dumbarton play. Declan Byrne that night harnessed his inner Kane Hester.
I was just going to say exactly the same thing. He did everything that Kane Hester did against Dumbarton. He was up front on his own. I think that was his first start back in, and he was buzzing around. He was working the defenders. He worked so hard. I think he got taken off after the hour, maybe 70 minutes or something like that. But he really did so well that night, and I just. Everything that Elgin game was, this Stenny game wasn't, and we just didn't quite really see it coming. I think something you said to me, Jack, actually at that game that I hadn't thought of at the time, but that Dumbarton performance, that came after them not having a training session since that game. So they would have just come back in, they would have had an absolute rollicking off the manager after Elgin, then come back into that situation. And for anyone that, like, I think there are some fans out there that are still undecided on the manager. They're maybe not his biggest fan or whatever, but I think I said to you that night, that is a team who was playing, in my opinion, for the manager. That doesn't just happen, and they're in obviously in a great position that, maybe the Elgin game's a wake up call, losing 2 games in the spin, but yeah, what a performance that was. It was just it was great to watch. It was a really good game to watch.
A big part of that as well, certainly as far as I'm concerned, was that sort of midfield duo of Joe McKee and Finlay Gray. Finlay Gray obviously got the winner on what everyone thought was his birthday, but which I later found out was in fact not his birthday.
You're joking.
I was reading an article today in a newspaper that I won't mention because it's a rival of both of our companies, but it was The Sun, that said his birthday is actually the 28th of April. And it's just wrong on every website, including Dumbarton's and the programme and everywhere.
But The Sun's right.
But The Sun is right because it came out the horse's mouth, or Finlay Gray's mouth. So his birthday is, so you'll get the chance to do it again, his birthday on the 28th of April.
Right, the 20th. Okay, I'm going to need to make a note of that. That just really, I was really going for that as well in the commentary. But it was a glorious narrative. What else was I supposed to do?
I heard unconfirmed reports that a local newspaper in Dumbarton may have ran a full page lead that was Birthday Boy Gray grabs winner or something along the lines of that, and he only found out, say, this morning that it wasn't actually his birthday.
Oh dear. Well, I mean, it was a lovely goal. It was a really nice hit, and yeah, he came on, didn't he, in the previous game? No, the game before that for into midfield and did really well and got his place back in the team.
Game,
Annan, that's exactly.
Came in and Wilson.
Wilson came off. Yeah.
And Wilson had been so good for ages. For Finlay to come in and fill Div's boots the way they has the past few weeks has been brilliant.
It's one that I've not actually looked into. You might have the stats there, he says, piling the pressure on. But I just feel like Joe McKee makes Dumbarton a far better team without standing out. Now, I don't know what the stats are, but it feels like, a bit like Greg Wild, maybe he goes a bit under the radar, but when he starts, you might only put in a 7 out of 10 every single week, but it makes Dumbarton a better team.
So you do this to me every time and you give me something like this that I don't have the stats for it. Then I come on the next podcast with the answers to it, and then you give me the next one. So you just, like, there's no... I don't have the win percentage of when McKee starts. But yeah, I think when he's on song, he does make this Dumbarton team better. And I'm a big fan of Finlay Gray as well, and I think they're a nice combination. The two of them in the middle of the park. Gray's got that energy. McKee's got that range of pass, and he's got that bit of composure. I think Wilson's got that as well. I'm a big fan of Wilson's first touch as well. I think he's got a bit of that as well. But
it was just something that popped into my head there. But obviously we're gonna have to touch on the pitch situation, and this seems like the ideal time to do it. That is not a Joe McKee pitch out there. It's not a David Wilson pitch. It might maybe suit Finlay Gray a wee bit more, but certainly not to a particularly high degree. How concerned are you about the pitch? Now, we've seen it today. It's past the pitch inspection. As of 11:45 a.m. on the 18th of March, Dumbarton will be playing Albion Rovers at home.
Give it time.
Yeah, give it time. High tide, low tide, and all that kind of stuff. How concerned are you about the pitch situation in terms of it now creating potentially a bit of a fixture backlog, but also, like, no player wants to play on a pitch like that?
about to already at the fixture backlog, because I think every team in the division, especially Stirling, have got that contend with us as well. It's more the way it's going to dig up after one game. It does look okay just now, but you can just tell as soon as 10 minutes and a couple of sliding challenges, the pitch is going to dig up and kind of leave its mark. It's not the pitch that will suit a Joe McKee, you're right there. But McKee he keeps us ticking over in the middle of the park. As he does his job very quietly, and obviously he's got that set piece delivery as well, which we've made the most of this season.
I wonder whether any player has been told if you score today there'll be absolutely no knee slides whatsoever, because that might take a little while to grow back.
But it might take a little while to find the player if they knee slide. It'd be like that Sol Campbell slide tackle at Wembley where he disappears like practically into the stand. If like you timed your knee slide right in front of the tunnel, you'd probably come out the front door.
I think, the worry about the pitch situation is just from the backlog that it's creating, and it feels it's obviously quite pivotal where Suns are in the season, the state of the title race. You obviously mentioned Stirling, they need to contend with it as well, but something that I wanted to put to you was this fixture backlog has now changed that slightly, where now Stirling Albion have Dumbarton at home first in this little double header, and I don't know how much you look into that or whether there's any sort of psychological advantage to be taken. Obviously you want to be taking the points, that's the main thing, but Stirling Albion have got a chance to play Suns at home. We all know what happened earlier on in the season. You win that, you might get to the summit, knock Dumbarton down a little bit, and then all of a sudden you've gone from leading for such a long period of time to chasing again.
The big thing that stands out to me, so I think both clubs would take a draw in the away game if they win the home game. So I think it changes it to an extent in that Suns, when they had Stirling here, I mean, I don't think this is what Stevie Farrell will have been saying to them or anything, but from my point of view, you need to win the home game, and then if you can go to Fourth Bank and take a point, that'll be absolutely fine. Now it switches that round, where Suns know, well, we can probably take a point at Fourth Bank, but even if we lose that, then we've got another game to basically cancel it out back at our place. That might help psychologically. What I will say though is, I think it's fired up Stirling Albion. I think that's twice they've obviously travelled here and it's been called off. The other game was called off a wee bit earlier, so it's maybe not quite the same. But I think if you're Darren Young, you're building that sort of siege mentality inside. Like, I absolutely would be like, these guys don't want to play you.
They're doing it publicly as well.
Yeah, they don't want to play you, or they're messing you about. They're trying to play mind games with you. Like, it's absolute drivel, obviously.
It's not that deep.
I don't think anyone's got the Mourinho-esque mind games, but I would absolutely be doing that, and I think Stevie Farrell would be doing that as well. Everyone agrees.
I agree with you. They've obviously they have been quite public in the sort of, I don't know, slight criticism of these games not going ahead, which I think is designed to do exactly that and to get the fans on side. And it just, the weather situation, it's unfortunate, but I feel like with these two games looming, and at one point I think they were sandwiched with one game in between. It would have been quite a quick turnaround. It just feels like that has been on the horizon for what feels like a long, long time. And I kind of want to get them out of the way, but also don't at the same time, because
this will be my third week previewing Dumbarton against Stirling Albion on the back page of the paper. I'm running out of people to talk about it. That's the problem. But it feels like those Stirling games, they could be season defining, but also, if Dumbarton win that game, I'm not immediately going to be like, well, that's it, it's the League One. And if Stirling win it, they're not going to be like, that's it, the League One. Because this league, and it's such a cliche, and it actually almost hasn't been the case in that Dumbarton and Stirling have been so far ahead of everybody else. But, like, would you be super confident going to Clifton Hill, going to New Dundas Park, going down to Stair Park, which we'll come to, where Sun's record is horrendous? Like, there are so many opportunities to slip up, and every other team in this league at this moment in time has something to play for.
And it's got to come at some point. I was just going to say to you there, I think maybe the only thing is, like, we've seen Suns lose a couple of games in the last 4-6 games. Stirling Albion just seem to just not lose. They just seem to, even if they're behind, they seem to just bring it back and get in a draw. And I am a believer, like, I don't think that can continue for the rest of the season. Like, they will have to lose at some point, but they seem to have that, like, just.
What I would also say about Stirling Albion is they've scored some of the best goals I have seen, and they've been at huge points in their season. So down at Annan, they scored 2 screamers. I think Kieran Moore and Ross McGeechy. Now, Ross McGeechy is not a guy who scores goals. I think he's been at Albion for near enough a decade, and I think he's in single-figure goals. He's gone and smacked one in from 25 yards. Danny Denham scored an outrageous goal against Albion Rovers at home, like an absolutely one of the best goals I've seen this season. And even last week when they got that injury time winner against Bonwick, it was a beautiful goal. See, there was no desperation, it was just a really well worked goal and a great finish from Jack Leach. Now, there's two ways of looking at that. That's what title winners do.
I think that's what some of their fans might be thinking.
Yeah.
Like this is the mark of it, champions.
Yeah, but there's also a way of looking at it and going, well,
you can't score worldies of the week kind of thing. Yeah,
Charlie Riley can, but most people can't score like a screamer every single week to almost dig you out that gap. That's not to say that they won't just go and score 3 normal goals or 5 from set pieces in one game.
They wouldn't do that.
No, that would be silly.
That would be harsh. Why would you do that to somebody? That's horrible.
Yeah, just like they can't defend corners in this game, so just leave them alone. Like there's no need. Show a bit of humanity.
It's like Suns have never done that. That would be horrible.
Yeah, not to Darren Young team.
No, definitely not.
We'll come to the final game that we've got to talk about in this sort of, well, I was going to say it's been a month and a bit since we did the podcast, but we've only done 5 games, and that includes 1 midweek. And that was what feels like a lifetime ago at Stranraer. I managed to get back yesterday, because that's how long it takes to get back from Stranraer, just in time for today's game, so I was quite pleased that the Forfar and Stirling Albion games were called off. That is Dumbarton's 8th win in 46 trips to Stair Park, stretching back to 1955. Jack Crawford, how many of them have you seen?
2, I believe.
Yeah, I think I'm the same.
I think did we win 3-0?
Yep.
Ross Perry scored that game.
Ross Perry did score that game.
Ross Perry.
That's a real Irish moment.
3-0 with Dom Thomas, Ross
scored.
Perry and Ross Forbes, where you can see me on the highlights. I think it was 0-0 at this point. Ross Forbes.
Did you have your shirt off?
Yeah, you know, the big DFC tattooed on my stomach. And as Ross Forbes takes on the shot, I shout, "Don't shoot!" in a sort of exasperated tone, and then he goes and sticks it in the top corner. So what do I
can
know?
tell Ross Forbes not to shoot.
I know, what was I thinking? Like, there's just absolutely no thinking going on there.
Well, I was going to say you were very pessimistic before that game, but yeah, those stats back it up. I didn't realise they were quite that bad. So.
They really are absolutely dismal, and that was a polished, professional, comfortable performance.
Yeah, all of those things you said, a really good away performance at both ends of the park. I don't think we really came in too much trouble conceding either, and we probably could have had a couple more. Really professional performance, and talking about Stirling doing all these things that kind of maybe makes them worthy title winners, but for the Dumbarton team to go to Stranraer and win,
that doesn't scream title winner. I don't know what does.
Yeah, exactly.
And it backs up the win against Stenhousemuir as well, doesn't it? It backs up the performance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously that was also back-to-back clean sheets, so I'm just getting that up now, but that's 13 clean sheets in 26 league games. I don't know how I forgot that, because Faz has mentioned it quite a lot, but 13 clean sheets in 26 league games. This was a Dumbarton team who kept, how many last season? 4 or thereabouts?
Yeah,
that is, you know, that's a case of, over the summer, Faz has obviously looked at what cost Dumbarton last season, and actually going forward they were okay. What cost them massively was at the back, and to have 13 clean sheets after 26 league games is phenomenal.
I think we're on track for the record, aren't we? Is it 16?
I think one more in the league would equal the record, and 2 more would beat it.
Jim updates us every week, doesn't he?
I think Brett Long will be very confident about beating that as well, I would imagine.
I would think so.
It just to put it into perspective, what the Suns went 4 games without a clean sheet, and I remember like writing down just like 4 games without a clean sheet. This is ridiculous. And I was just like, I don't think I'd seen that since I've started, like since I've been involved here. Probably not, but.
The man who sort of, I guess, starred in both boxes in that game as well was Gregor Buchanan. Now, we have been informed that he'll be out for today's game at Albion Rovers, so it's no point talking about how big a miss he might be. Could be because Suns could go and win 3-0 and nobody will notice, or Suns could lose 3-0 and everyone will say he's been a huge miss. But after I think it's safe to say, a pretty difficult season last year where we didn't see the Gregor Buchanan that was here in his first spell, how impressed have you been by Gregor this season?
Massively, not just Gregor, but the whole back 5, and I think that's why we're on track for that clean sheet record, because we've had that consistent back 5 all season. Obviously coming in as captain this season after Carsey last season, and another step up for maybe that's bringing the best out of it, and out of Carsey as well. It's brought a different level to Carsey's game, but the whole back 5's been terrific this season. And
the newest addition to that back 5 is a man who I'm pretty sure you're just going to mention is Peter Grant, who I have been hugely impressed with.
Absolutely, I'm glad you brought it up, because I wanted to, but yeah, I've been very impressed with him since he's come into the side. There was no disrespect to Carswell when he came out and Grant went in, but Peter Grant just looks like a centre half. He attacks the ball like a centre half. He heads it and kicks it in the most beautiful centre half way, and Yeah, I think he's been really, really impressive, and it's left Stevie Farrell. I mean, Buchanan's out today, but in the running, it's left him with options. Like, he's given himself some options up top. He's now got some at the heart of defence, and maybe it's given him a headache. I don't know who I would personally start if all three are fit. But I've just been hugely impressed with him since he's come into the team, and I don't know how loudly I was saying it when his dad was sitting right in front of us, but he came on as substitute. It's just a wonderful header from Grant.
What you should say as well is, you spoke about Bucky taking the armband, but Peter Grant is a captain without the armband. He's so vocal on the pitch. I've seen him dishing out rollickings, I've seen him getting guys going, he's pushing the team up, and just having another vocal leader back there. I mean, I couldn't believe he's 28, I think. He plays like a guy who's in his mid-30s and, coming to the end of his career.
He's been about forever.
It does feel like that, doesn't it? I mean, he scored in the Scottish Cup final, like, absolutely years ago, but he must have been a child at that point.
I know, he's been terrific since he came in. He's barely put a foot wrong. I think he made his debut up at Steny when we conceded late on, and he was really unlucky. I think Farrell said after the game, Peter Grant didn't deserve to be on a losing team there, because he came on even though it was over 10 minutes. He won every header, even in the build up to that goal at Stennismead. He won about 2 headers before the ball came back in. Chris was saying, like, who would you pick as your kind of 2 centre backs? It's a difficult one, because Carthy doesn't deserve to be dropped, but I think when you're going for a league title, you need that. So Peter Grant won this league a couple of years ago with Queen's Park, so he really deserved to be in the team, I think.
Going for a hat-trick of promotions, he told me, because he got promoted with Queen's Park last year as well. The man knows what it takes to get over the line.
I agree with that, to be honest. Yeah, I think I don't think Carswell deserves to be dropped.
No.
But
he's also naturally left-footed, Peter Grant, and that it sounds so simple, but just that balance of having 2 left-footers and 2 right-footers, and it's something that Dumbarton haven't had for a wee while, is that sort of natural balance of a left-footer and a right-footer at centre-half, and it maybe helps him play out a wee bit more. And the pitch isn't particularly conducive to that, but Peter Grant's a guy who seems to always be looking for the ball, like he's quite happy to take it.
It also might open up your options if you've got Stuart Carswell sitting on the bench, in the last half hour, depending on what way the game is going.
You can bring him on midfield.
You could bring him on.
You
could bring him on midfield. You could drop him sitting right in front of Grant and Buchanan. You could even bring him back in, and they could drop to a 3 at the back if they're really under the cosh trying to shut the game down. But I'm sure Stuart Carswell won't be happy with us saying this, but it could work both ways.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole competition for places thing, and Carswell will get a chance today, you would think, with Bucky being out. We'll just take a wee chance to look ahead at the games Dumbarton have coming up, and it is a really, I was going to say mouth-watering or terrifying, depending on which way you want to look at it, fixture list. Stirling Albion away, Forfar Athletic and Stenhousemuir at home, and an Athletic away. That's one of the hardest little runs that you could have a fixture.
You stopped before Stirling Albion at home.
I stopped before Stirling Albion at home. Yeah.
Did you get too terrified?
Yeah, I just didn't click on the next page. So I don't think it would be an over-exaggeration to say, I mean, like we said, we don't know what's going to happen today against Albion Rovers. So I'm just completely ignoring that game because it'll be history by the time this is out. But those next 4 or 5 games, they will determine Dumbarton's season.
Absolutely. Massive games, really difficult games. Teams that are playing well under new managers, teams that have got the division's best players. As you say, it's going to kind of determine how the season ends up, I think. Obviously, going to Stirling next week, we could find ourselves more ahead, clear at the top. We could find ourselves in second place. We're Stirling playing midweek, so if Stirling win midweek, that would be an interesting dynamic for the game. Us going there, as you touched on earlier, as the chasers. Maybe Dumbarton might approach this game differently than we did last time, going 2 up top, so we'll have to see what Farrell does for that one.
The other thing as well, though, you need to remember when you are in this position, you might look at a fixture list and it's a bit scary, but these are sides that Dumbarton have beaten this season, and they know that they're capable of doing that. You saw it, like the win against Stenhousemuir wasn't that long ago, and it was very good. Stirling Albion's a different ball game, and an Athletic wasn't a great result, but they managed to dig out a win. Like it can be done. It really can be done.
It almost feels as well, because it's been so long since that Stirling Albion game, that they've maybe been built up, and if Dumbarton had played Stirling Albion in November and then again in February, there probably wouldn't feel, I don't know if daunting's the word, but that game feels huge. But if that game had taken place in January when it was supposed to, then the away game now, regardless of what happened in the game, if it had taken place in January, it wouldn't have been 6-0 either way. Maybe if it had been 2-2, 1-1, whatever, it wouldn't feel as big or as daunting as it does. But now I'm looking at it and thinking, well, that's Stirling Albion twice in just 10 days or whatever it is. Like that feels a lot bigger, because they've not played each other. And
that's
so
what I was saying. It's looming. It's looming large, and it's the quick turnaround, and there's a lot that can change in those, those 180 minutes, if you like, and both sides know that as well. And I mean, I'm quite looking forward to the home game. I'm really glad with how many times it's been changed as well. I think there's been twice when I've not been able to make it and twice when I have, so I'm really glad that I'm going to be able to make the next one. But
so sure, you've been out there digging up the park when you can't make it.
Been out there with the buckets of water that I saw Stirling Albion fans accusing Sons of doing. I might actually go to that Stirling Albion game that's midweek. I forgot about that. It's 10 minutes down the road from me, so I might go for that. But anyway, that way I get over my Stirling Albion phobia, because I'll see them in real life and then they won't seem as daunting. It's like when a child's scared of dogs and they get at a dog, so it isn't quite as scared of it.
Aye, sure, yeah.
Anyway, after the break, we will be joined by the last man to lead Dumbarton to a league title, the man responsible for me now going all over the country, following Dumbarton, chasing that same feeling I got down at Annan. It'll be Jim Chapman. As you'll see at the break, we made a wee substitution. Jack Crawford has been punted off to hospitality to enjoy 5-star food, and joining us to slum it in the ball boys room is, well, Dumbarton royalty in a way, the last man to win a league title with the Suns, Mr. Jim Chapman. Jim, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome, guys, you're welcome.
So, as I touched on there, you were obviously the last man to lead Dumbarton to a league title, but you played for the club before that as well, at a kind of successful period in the club's history. But from your own point of view, your spell was cut short. I think, was it 12 games, something like that, by injury? So talk me through that time for you, because that must have been really difficult.
Yeah, I think, 1990 I signed, and it was just a change. I'd left Albion Rovers at the time, and spoke to Billy Lamont, the manager here, and there was a couple of interests, and obviously Bosman wasn't about at that time, so it was just a case of registration being retained by one club, clubs agreeing, and then when the opportunity came to Dumbarton, then I thought, yeah, I'm going to go for that. But I was also going through my coaching licence at the time as well as my B licence, so we came in 1990, and it was an exciting time, and Billy Lamont, had sort of outlined the plans, and it was quite exciting, as I said there, and then I joined it and came down and started to look forward. My first couple of games back, funny enough, my first game back was against Albion Rovers, having left them as a player. Made my debut at Clifton Hill, if I recall right. We lost 3-2, but as it was progressing, we started to see things going really well. And the team starting to knit together, and then we started to go on this unbeaten run. And I think John McQuaid, fabulous player. Charlie Gibson up front, was solid at the back with our captain Jimmy Dempsey and stuff. So there were a real good core of players there, and I felt it was a chance that maybe that would be the year for Dumbarton. And then just, I suppose I call it Chappie's luck, at times, up at Arbroath, 10th of November, about 4:20. Not that I remember it, in 1990, that all of a sudden there was a sort of situation in the game where the ref stopped the game off the ball, and Big Jimmy gets sent off, and I seen the manager running down the touchline. The linesman flagged up, Jimmy Dempsey sent off, gave a penalty to Arbroath, so there was a delay in the game, and it was probably a game, that you're thinking we're comfortable 1-0 and we're going to win this game, and then it ended up 1 each. So me and my wisdom, my man down, we get into the go near the box, and I'm saying I'll just go in the box here, but I cut inside and misplaced my shot as usual. It came back to me, and as I changed foot, my knee popped. Something went wrong, and I hadn't really had any injuries, and and me determined as ever to do well. Off you went, and then Bob McCallum got his Bobby, said, I think you'll be okay. Go back on there, and sent back onto the pitch and think you're going to be okay, and as if the sniper just takes you out, my knee buckles again, and heartbreaking for me personally. And he said that regardless what happens, you'll never play again. And I kept trying to prove them wrong. Yeah. But unfortunately they won. I couldn't play. People say I couldn't play to begin with, never mind play again. But it was tough at the time. But I think the way the club here took care of me, which was good. I then become on the coaching staff, and they helped me through my coach education, my A licence. And then 1991-92, I was player coach. Tried to keep myself playing as much as I could, but as I said, I came onto the coaching staff there with Billy Simpson, Billy Lamont, obviously, and Donald McNeil, and we started to work away at that, and that got me hooked into the coaching as well. So that was part of my plan, that in 2 years when I signed at Dumbarton, if I couldn't make it any further, then coaching was going to be my path and my journey. I just, unfortunately, I had to go down that journey a wee bit earlier than anticipated. But when you seen the guys winning the title 91-92, I was delighted for them, but I didn't kick a ball that season, so I felt hurt again, and you miss out. And every player will tell you want to be part of something, and a lot of the guys tried to keep you involved, and you're part of the coaching team, and the manager was fantastic with me and all that. I wasn't on that part kicking the ball or kicking the opponents and help my teammates. It was always tough. So, but yeah, it was great introduction to Dumbarton, and that's why I've always got fond memories of this club.
How much of a part did it play, do you think, trying to go back onto the pitch after that injury? Do you think it made any, much of a big impact, like trying to put weight on it again just instantly? Or, maybe if you'd have got that injury not in 1990, say, and they were a bit more used to it, maybe that might have been able to prevent you ending the career,
Yeah, I think modern day, if these injuries they're more frequent now, you hear them, and they're probably dealt with better, progressions in the medicine, recoveries, rehabs, even the type of operations you went through. Yeah, I did. I mean, again, me being my determined self, when you do your cruciate in November and you try and make a comeback in March, 3-4 months, that's just, call it poor rehab, call it poor guidance more than anything, but that I was at the front of that because I was so determined to come back. And through your career you always felt you had to justify yourself, having been rejected as a young kid, people don't think you're good enough, so you always had that point to prove. So, and when people put a bit of trust in you and bring you to the club and a wee bit of expectation, a wee bit more guidance. And where I am now, I wish I could go back, because if it happened to myself again, then I'd been a better place to guide myself properly. But I tried to persuade the manager to play me, and I ended up playing a reserve game, and I only to play 45 minutes, it was against Airdrie at Lockhead, and he says, that's you done. I felt great. I was quite a strong player, so the surgeon said, yeah, everything feels great, just go for it. And me, yeah, that's the green light, that's all I needed to go for it. And when I came back, and I again convinced the manager to leave me on for another 10-15 minutes, which is probably the worst mistake ever, because if I came off at half time, maybe, you just don't know. But then I fell off, I just kept the ball and fell off the side of the pitch. There was nobody near me again, and my knee buckled. Back up to the hospital, and that's when you through the operations. And I think I had about 4 operations within the space of about 3 months, 4 months, just trying to come back. And anyway, I remember a night after that one, you wake up out of the operation for a second and say, that's you, you're finished, you'll never play again. And I was determined to do so, and I'm lying there crying like a baby, and I tell the events and being in the hospital where overnight, just after being told this and that news and feeling sorry for yourself, there was a man inside the bed, and he actually his leg amputated below the knees, and during the night he had a big clatter because he got up and fell off the bed, and he's laughing, and I'm like, oh, what's happened? But he thought, yeah, he just dreaming, he got up as if he was going to go to the toilet, and he came out and just fell off the bed, So the reality started to kick in. I'm there feeling sorry for myself, I'll never play again, but at least I've got my leg. And this guy, he had no legs, and I thought, you know what, Jim, it's not the end of the world. You've started your coaching career, and let's go on, mate. But as I said, nowadays you'd have probably been guided better, probably been restricted, but that's my fault. I was pushy, desperate to do well, and then you go into the coaching. So as I said, I picked up the coaching 1991-92, was fantastic for the club, and for myself it was a great learning under both Billies, and then after that I got the opportunity to go into the SFA, so it was a career cut short. I don't know what we were being, and sometimes I still feel that wee bit of what could have been, what might have been, based on people, the interest you had, John McQuaid, I remember John calling me something, called me a selfish so-and-so, right, to be fair, because both of us had started doing really well here, and there was a lot of interest from down south, and Quaid blames me for missing out on an opportunity to go south and a transfer. So, but again, a talented kid in his own right, he would have made a lot higher level as well, John. So yeah, it was interesting times, and something you don't forget, but it helps me guide my players, it helps me guide young players coming through, and you learn from your mistakes, and you use the experience of your own self and others to guide and make sure people don't make the same mistake I did.
That was exactly what I was going to say, is do you think that your own injury situation meant that when you moved into coaching and management that you were certainly erring on the side of caution with players, basically put your arm around them and say, look, I know how desperate you are to get back out there, but you rush this by a month, a couple of weeks, you'll end up not playing again.
It's followed me every single day. There's not a day I don't think about it, there's not a day, what if, everybody always talks about what ifs, and I always turn around and say that to the players I work with, whether it's young players, even the academy, even the women's football now, what if you do go back too early? What about the big picture? What if it doesn't work? And I keep using that because I kept thinking that myself. And sometimes it's that sliding door moment that, what if you didn't get injured? Would we win the league that year? Would I got your move? And then all of a sudden you went the wrong way, and well, you live to regret it a wee bit, but I don't want you to have any regrets, and that's why I want to say to young players, don't make the same mistakes I did. And you can only talk for experience, you can only talk about guiding the young players, but again, everybody makes choice. And I say that everything's about choice, but the choice you make, you're always, and I have a great phrase I say to the players every time I work with them, you're free to make choice, but you're never free of the consequences of your choices. And then just keep thinking about that. So think the big picture, because at the end of the day, we love the game, we want to be part of the game, we don't want to miss a game, but there's a lot more to life than a game of football.
And presumably you'll coach some players that you will see their career prolonged because you've been able to give them that advice.
Well, yeah, I think, at the end of the day, you're only part of a team now. Now you think about the medical team behind the sports science, the resources now put into football and to guide players, and the game, they talk about the game being a lot for fitter, faster, stronger players, so you've got to make sure that they're the best of health, and sometimes how you train and the way you do, the loads that you give can lead to injury prevention, but it's, I think the recovery periods and the rehab programs off the pitch, away from injuries, is so much greater now, but you can only share your experiences, as I said, and I think I will never ever force a player to do anything, and if the medical team or the physio says yes, they can play, that's good. If they say no, then the answer's no, regardless the player trying to twist your arm or your back, regardless. Like my own experience, encouraging Billy, please let me stay on for another 10 minutes.
Unless it's your 40-goal a season top scorer, I presume.
Well, that was a funny thing, because I'd only played 11 games. People thought I was a striker here because I started scoring goals, and one of the bonuses of a contract was if I did score 10, then I got financially rewarded. But when you only play 11 games, then you miss out on some targets. But no, I think everybody's driven, but you've got to be guarded by reality. And the most important thing for me is, there's a life after football, so make sure you're fully fit and ready for it.
Touching on your own managerial career, it obviously started at Kilmarnock's women's team, going back to Britain. I mean, that's where you are now, I think, if my research is correct, so it's kind of gone full circle. But talk to me about those early days of women's football, because it's grown a fair bit in recent years, but back then I think it certainly felt like a really, really sort of grassroots sort of world. Yeah,
and that's probably the reason why we were allowed to be involved in it. As I said, I worked with SFA for many years after I left Dumbarton, and I was offered a couple of jobs in the professional game, but because I worked with SFA, we were not permitted to undertake any coaching duties. And one of my staff in the development team was a girl called Donna Chain, and she played for Kilmarnock Ladies, and she said to me, the coaches left towards the end of the season, do you mind taking a couple of coaching sessions? So I asked permission for the SFA, and like you said, they went, yeah, I'll be okay, because it's recreation, it's amateur, which was, maybe now if you say that it's a bit disrespectful, but at the time that's what it was grassroots football, there wasn't that interest in, and I was a wee bit, I've been prevented from taking jobs in the professional game, but I'm okay to work at the recreation game and amateur game, conflict of interest. Anyway, I said that's for another day sometime, and I said to Donna, yeah, okay, I'll come down and do some coaching. The 3 coaching sessions lasted about 3.5 years. You get the bug, the girls were so receptive, they just wanted to learn, and we get in there and get a bit of success, and I easily confess this, that for my own tactical development as a coach, it went through the roof, because the game is physically slower, so you see things happening a wee bit quicker. So my own tactical development, it was good for me, it was good for the players because we had a lot of success. But it also led to some frustrations, because you can see things a lot quicker than the girls were executing it. So, and I think people know me as the type of person I'm quite animated at times. I'm like, come on, frustrations, emotions, everything that goes into it. So, it was good. So I think it was a great part of my coaching early career in coaching, and you get the bug that, I think I developed well there. So I get something out of it. For a selfish point of view, if you're going to do something, do it properly, but you want to learn, and I'm never done learning, so it was a great learning experience for myself. It was great for the club, the Kilmarnock women's team, because the success we had, getting into the Champions League a couple of times was just incredible experience, going away at that level. I never experienced that as a player, nor before any managerial career here, getting to Europe and seeing what it's all like there as well. So it was a great experience for us all. And I think that the sad part was you built a programme up, and then when you walk away from it, or it's time up for me to go my next step, and you see it just falling down again. And I think that's where I see the biggest change now in the women's football nowadays, is that there is sustainable structures in place, there is resources behind it, and not before time, but it's good to see that, so that when we do build up the programmes again, then hopefully they'll be here for many years to come.
Can you see more managers making that move from the female game? Because it feels like there's no real fluidity. I know Eddie Willecki-Black managed Airdrie for a wee bit until he had some health conditions, I think, that knocked him out of that sort of side of things. And I know Brian Graham is in charge of Partick Thistle's women's team. Do you think it will be something that over, I don't know, maybe the next 10 years, 20 years, that there becomes more fluidity with coaches moving between female and male football?
Well, again, working with the SFA and even the coach education team, you're coming across all these coaches looking to get their licences every year. So every year there's another cohort of A licensed coaches, B licensed coaches, even pro licensed coaches. But there's only so many jobs out there. But I'm just a great believer, and obviously in the development, I've been in the development of the game for so many years, that regardless of where you work, coaches will love if you love coaching, have a passion for coaching, you work at any level. You know, I've had great experience of working with men's professional, women's professional, amateur recreation, even down to coaching coaches how to work with 5-year-olds. So I think that the ability to adapt, and I remember a great mentor of mine, Ollie McLean, said to me that now you're going into coaching, you know, the secret to any good coach is your ability to adapt. And I think if you've got the passion for coaching, you want to help, then it doesn't matter who you work with, you just adapt to the group you're working with, whether it's kids, whether it's females, whether it's men, you know, and I think, you know, the two biggest things I've came across, people say, what's the biggest challenges or the differences between the men's and the women's game, and I put it down to 2 E's. And the E's is in the male side it's all egos, and in the women's side it's emotions, you know. So, but you know, it's how you learn how to deal with that, and a lot of it just comes down to people management, you know. And I think through my career and the experiences I've got, I'd like to think that was a strength of mine. Some people might tell me different, but you know that you're never going to please everybody. But I think that side of it, because as a coach, sometimes you're an educator, you're a teacher, you're just someone there to learn and guide people. But at the same time, you know, you're also a human being. And I've got that about me as well, is that you're talking to a human being regardless of male, female, age, whatever it's going to be. So I think, you know, if you've got a passion for coaching, then any opportunity to help develop you would be, I think everybody should embrace it.
You obviously will jump forward a wee bit in your career to when you joined Dumbarton, which was, I think it was Hogmanay 2007 was your first game. That was a really low point for the club. They were struggling at the wrong end of League 2, or 3rd Division as it was. Just tell me a wee bit about the Dumbarton that you walked into, because that season is not one I think fans will remember particularly fondly.
You know, it was a bit of it came right out of the blue, if I'm being perfectly honest, obviously the times. And the jobs come about because somewhere along the line things aren't going well at a club, and being, again, partly and supportive of all coaches and managers and totally understand where they are. You don't like to see anyone losing their job, but that creates an opportunity for somebody else. And I'd already committed, I actually was going to Inverness Cali with Craig Brewster, because I was going through my pro licence at the time with these guys, and Craig offered me a job. I'd lost a job at Albion Rovers, and again, just working away in the academies. I'm grateful to Craig Mulholland for helping me, and at Rangers and stuff, and then Craig offered me the opportunity to go and work with him up at Inverness. So I was leaving the SFA, I was signed a contract to go full time up at Inverness, and really looking forward to that. And then I got a call to say, look, would you like to speak about the Dumbarton job? But I was already aware, I thought the job had gone, because I believe John Brown had accepted the job, and I never even thought about the job, if I was being perfectly honest, because it was all gone. And then the call come back and he said, no, I think John has reneged on the offer, or whatever it was going to be. And I, again, respect the fact that they called and asked to speak. I thought it was very respectful, and it made me feel good, you know, that, it's good somebody wants you again, regardless of your experience, your last jobs. You know, you do hurt, you know, people forget that you do have emotions as well. You do feel it when, you know, if you've lost a job, whether it's moving on, sacked, whatever you want to call it, you know, you've lost a job. So you have that wee, you know,
mutual consent, that old phrase.
It does happen. That does happen, to be fair. And then you just used it. And then when I came down and spoke to the club and asked them their plans, because I was already committed, you know, and it gave me the confidence to say, look, this has to be right for me now, personally, because where I was going, what I was doing, my career, my next step, my journey, and they outlaid the plans. And I said, well, you know, it's where you are at the moment, where you want to be. That's a big step. But I do know how to get you there. However, it won't just be easy. It's going to take time, and you've got to really resource it. You've got to back it. You've got to be really committed to it. And I got the go ahead, and the board right behind everything we did, and they offered me the job. And I remember when I got offered the job, and I said to the chairman, Alan, at the time, I says, before I can really commit to everything, I need to make a phone call. And I phoned Craig Brewster for the hotel after the interview, or chatting about the job, and I phoned Craig, and he said, look, they've offered me the job, and he full blood, Jim, go for it, you know, on you go, you've got my full backing. And I said, but I've committed to you, I'm quite a loyal person. He says, you've got my blessing, so on you go, and I'm sure our paths will cross again. So got the go ahead, we came in, and I don't think it was very popular, because you're right, I think it was Hogmanay or something, you got offered like everybody in for New Year's Day training, because I believe the first game on the 2nd of January against the day's opponents, Albion Rovers, but it just seems to follow me as a player and a manager, that my old clubs as a manager and old clubs as a player, I ended up playing in the first game. So players came in, I spoke to the group and said, okay, let me know where we are. And I think that's important. You've got to get the buy-in for the players, and I let the players, they emptied everything. What do you think they're good at? Where do you think we're being? What do you think we're doing? Okay, because it's again, as a coach and even a manager, sometimes you're facilitating the group of players. You try to empower them, not to give them too much power, because sometimes that can backfire, as it has. But you do that because at the end of the day, it's still the most important thing about football is players. As far as I'm concerned, coaches, managers, you know, you try and guide and get the best out of them, but players will always dominate what happens, you know, and I think that's the key thing. And so trying to build that relationship and let them understand that you're there for them, trying to understand where they are, and then you just try and guide them that way you want to go, because you've got the buy-in from them, you know. And the good thing was there were some good players here, but there was also some players here who were, again, I won't mention any names, please don't ask me to do that, but there was undue stress, you know, from the crowds. I did a bit of research about how many players were playing, and some of the call it targets from the stands, sorry, you know, there that some players were getting no ends of grief that sometimes the coaches and managers get when it doesn't go well, but it seemed to be a few players. And I remember taking a couple of players to side and say, look, I'm not going to play you for a couple of weeks, because I want to just take you out and protect you, and we come back, and they come back a bit stronger because of that. You know, and I tried to explain to them, but like players were, I want to play, so they obviously thought you were in your plans, but when you guide them and you tell them the plan for them, then they come back to you. And I think we got that. However, there was a lot of, I don't want to say negativity, but there was that downside that, oh, we're not doing well, we're never going to get anywhere. So it was a case of managing it through to the end of the season, try and put a wee bit of blocks in, and as much as we're guiding it week to week on for the rest of that season, I was starting to put plans in place for the summer, because I knew that was my opportunity to start building, put the foundations in.
It felt almost at that time, I mean, even from what I remember from that period, it was like, right, just get to the end of the season, don't finish bottom. I mean, there was no trap door in those days, so you could finish bottom if you wanted, but don't finish bottom because it would be embarrassing for the club, and then just rip it up and start again in the summer. But what I want to touch on is one of your kind of earlier signings, and a guy who you probably knew better than most was obviously Gordon Lennon. Talk to me about Gordon, because you would have known him as well as anybody in football. Yeah, and again, your paths cross again, and young lad again, John Doyle at Army Row, Robert Watt at Albion Rovers. You know, we when we were building the team at Albion Rovers, there wasn't a great deal of resources, so we go for the younger guys, and guys coming out of 21s and stuff, so we got to know a good level about that. And we brought Gordon into Albion Rovers, and he just brightened the place up, you know, and I just loved playing, very raw, there's a good bit of talent about him as well, but and that happened for that young Albion Rovers team we had, you know, because even I brought a couple of players back who was probably losing their way, like Scott Chapman, for example. He'd lost his way a wee bit, and they come back, and you started to get this young, hungry team together at Albion Rovers, who were on the up at the times, and unfortunately didn't suit some people above me, and you lose your job on that. But again, when you talk about loyalty, if you install a bit of loyalty and trust in some people, you get it back. And I think with Gordon, I asked him to trust me. I said, you know, as I always do, any player I work with, my main aim is to make you better, and that was my aim, is to try and make them better. And he bought into everything we were doing, he helped, he guided us, and played a significant part for taking the clubs forward. And you build that relationship, and so much so, his potential, I spoke to him, I call it Partick Thistle, and I'm thinking, this is a young lad I think you could really take forward. But it went and it didn't really work out for him, because, and I'm sure I don't mind me mentioning this, but
if you judge Guido at training, then you'd think, yeah, forget it, you know. But he just didn't like training. He always come up with the favourite phrases. When we get a side gaffer, you know, and that was it. We just wanted to play. I loved playing, you know. But there was a couple of players there, even a young lad, Stephen Donaghy, was a fantastic talent. But you've got to look at the boys who are hungry to do well. You've seen something in them, and then you take them and say, I think there's more to come from you, but we need to try and work with you. And when you put that bit of loyalty and trust in them, you got it back. And then the relationship started to build a wee bit more off the pitch as well, because his family, and you get to know his family, and absolute magnificent family, and you know, I can't speak highly of him, and also his family as well. But when he goes to Partick Thistle, and then I go out a job, and then we get the job here, and I remember someone saying, oh, there's a couple of list of players that previous coaches and managers had mentioned, and I looked down the list, I went, well, he'll be here soon, he'll be here, I can get him. How can you get him? Trust me. You know, and as soon as he was on a loan spell to good friends of mine, John Coughlin and Matt Kerr, you know, and they were good friends, all over rivals for 90 minutes, but they were very supportive of me, and I really thank John and Matt for that support at times when you were out the job. And they knew that, because Gordon was on loan to Stenhousemuir, and they knew that as soon as I get a job, then Guido would be, his loan deal was finished at Thistle and he was coming straight here. So, and again, coming here, and we started to build it, but it wasn't just his ability as a player, his personality, you know. And another good lad I spoke to was Mick Dunlop. I'd already started to look at Michael. It was Queen's Park, with a bit of an injury at the time, but I didn't mind, because I knew Michael would be a real cornerstone for me. And I spoke to him, and we convinced Michael to come here. And I know when he signed, the chairman, he says, he's a bit injured. He says, no, I know he'll be injured to begin with, but trust me, this guy will help take us forward. You know, and I put a bit, again, that's that trust, and Michael came here, and you know, and it was, you just had that kind of relationship with players, and hopefully they remember these things, you know, as I said. But sometimes if it doesn't end well, they always turn, but you forget how it started, you know. So, but when Guido came in, and I think you've seen the popularity of him, the rapport he builds with his teammates, the staff, the fans, everybody. He loved his football, you know. And then it's just absolute tragedy, you know, that as you talk about things, I mean, my career got cut short with injury, but there's someone a lot worse whose life was cut terribly short, and unfortunately would never ever get a chance to fulfil what I thought he was capable of. But you know, we'll never forget him.
Was that quite an easy decision as well, to appoint him as captain, because he was young, he was relatively inexperienced in the senior game, but you gave him the armband, you know, very, very early on? Was that quite an easy decision, because not just of what he was like on the park, but like you say, building relationships off the park, and it doesn't really matter if you're 20 years old or 38 years old or whatever.
I mean, trust presumably as well. Yeah,
it's that trust in that relationship.
Yeah, I think the feeling you get with a player, and the trust that he knows where I was coming from, I know what he can do for me, and he technically was us in the changing room, and that's why the changing room, you know, people talk about, that's the player's domain. I mean, you've got someone in there who will make sure it's run the way you want it to run, and you build that trust and relationships. And I had that in Guido, and Guido had that from his players. So it was a dead easy decision, regardless of his age and experience, his personality, you know. But at the same time, he understood where we were coming from, having worked with his previous, understanding what we're trying to achieve, you know. And if there was anyone slacking or not really trying to go the same direction as herself, then I didn't have to intervene. You know, the players did that themselves. You know, and then say about a good couple of characters in the changing room, but none bigger than Guido.
Are you always going to have slightly older players that when you'd give the armband to a younger player that are going to, you know, turn their nose up at it or have a word with you, or is that something that you did expect at all?
I didn't expect anything.
No.
If I'm being honest, I don't. This is the way we're going, you know, and it's quite straightforward. As I say, when I first come in, you speak to players, come on, talk to me. Let's tell me, okay, and it's my job is to build. You put all the pieces of the jigsaw together. My job is to build it all. You know, and then try to say to players and explain to them where and why, you know, why we make these decisions and why we try to achieve this. You know, at the end of the day, you know, the captain's a guy with the captain's armband, but every player who started for me, I wanted to feel like a captain. It's about accepting roles and responsibilities. It all became leadership, and I think that's the key bit, is that this leadership, people talk about leadership, and there's some real good experienced players I managed to bring in just to help the younger lads. But as a leader and a captain, he probably wouldn't be able to do that kind of role, and I didn't want to dilute the responsibilities, you know, or even for them, because sometimes they go a different direction. You know, they say, well, I'm the captain, and maybe they change. So you've got to have the right type of person who it won't affect their performance, and it won't affect them personally either within the dressing room, because sometimes captains can. I'm too busy worrying and coaching everybody else, they forget about their own game. Whereas, if everybody could say, well, I've got to take care of myself, and you need a captain here just to remind them. And I'm quite sure the guys will be happy to tell you ever play me. I wasn't short of reminding them myself, so it wasn't just Guido or the captain or other players. It was we did it together, and I think that's the key thing.
In the summer of 2008, you made some of the. I mean, we spoke to Stevie Aitken on the podcast before about making having a cracking window. The summer of 2008, you brought in Mick Dunlop, we touched on there, Dave McEwen in goals, Ross Clark, Stevie Murray, Derek Cartwright. I mean, a host of others that will come to as well. You must have sat back as a manager and gone, pretty pleased with my business this window.
Although it does sound like you knew that you were going to feel quite pleased with your window in the run up to the summer.
There's two things. That when you're, I think somebody said to me about that season's the most amount of players that was played that season, because we did have to rip everything up. But as I spoke about earlier, doing a wee bit of groundwork before the end of the last 6 months of the first season, came in 2008 up to the summer, you're doing some work. I thought the type of football I wanted to play. I remember saying to Kane here, I wanted to open the pitch. I wanted to make the pitch wider, I want to be open, expansive, I want to be attractive football, get people with pace. Stevie, an absolute joy, fans' favourite, but again, he was one of these players that was maybe starting to think, what's my next step, and trying to encourage him to come here, tell him about what our plan is, what we're trying to do, and he bought into it. It was great. And then with Stevie and Derek Carker, who I just knew would probably give Usain Bolt a run for his money at Bell, and that's where the pitch came. But again, solid at the back. Dave McEwen, I knew through time at Hamilton. Get Michael and Guido come in, and even Big Ben Gordon and stuff that came in later. I remember saying to Charlie Devlin, who started working with 18s, because I started to put the youth structure in place at the time as well. And I spoke to Charlie, and Charlie recommended Ben, and we came to pre-season. I just said to Charlie, he signs for me, Charlie, or you don't work anymore. So Charlie was very influential in bringing Ben and all that. And so the network of people had working for us was great, and again, that's where your background in the game. And Ross Clark just reminded me of myself, what a fantastic attacking midfield goal scorer. And again, if you look at my teams through the seasons and everywhere they worked, is that my top scorers always seem to be attacking midfielders, because that's where I was, and you tend to look at these type of players, but Clarkey was absolutely a dream, an absolute dream, who just ended up on the ball in the box and scored so many goals for us, but when you've got the likes of Stevie Murray and Dale giving you outlets, and Stevie creating, solid at the back with Michael, Guido, Ben, even in the middle of the park going forward, bringing the change at the Christmas time was crucial for me as well. We knew we had a good spine, but we knew we needed extra, and it was more a quantity with some quality. But my whole plan was, when I got to December and the window opens again, was I can reduce the quantity and add a bit of quality. And I think Paddy Boyle's coming in, even bringing young Ross Forbes and Dennis McLaughlin, and when you start to look at even Ryan McStay, one of the most talented footballers you'll ever play or work with and all that, and all of a sudden I'm starting to look at it, and I became spoiled for choice. But again, we sort of trying to knit all that together. We had a wee down spell, but it was going to take time for them all to click, and then all of a sudden when they did click, we went on that fantastic run, and obviously became champions, which probably around about the January, February time, you think, well, maybe we'll win the race, but maybe still struggle because Cowdenbeath had kicked away. And when I got the guys together and how we gelled, and they were just fantastic characters, some of the fun, the banter, but they loved their football. And I love working with players who love to play, and they guys love to play, and they were a dream to work with.
I was just wondering whether you were going to ask, but it was certainly on my mind. You talked about when you came into the job and the vision and the plan that the club had, and it was, first of all, let's not finish bottom. But what was your aim in that summer? You already said you had an idea of what players you wanted to bring in. You're happy with your window. I mean, are you sitting there in July thinking we're going to win? We can win this league?
No. For me, as I say, it was more a quantity over quality issue. I needed some quality, but again, limited resources. You work within the budgets that we did. We used it wisely. But for every bit of quality you bring in, you might need a couple of extra players to give a bit of quality, strength and depth in your bench. So part of the plan was, there's some good young players here, there's some players here who will help take us that step. And it is a step-by-step process. So getting it started, getting off to a good start was important. Getting some, if you want to call it marquee signings, as people talk about nowadays, I thought we got that. We got a bit of excitement, we got a bit of experience and quality in. But we also had the other players, and even someone like Andy Gegg, and people had Geggs as a fullback. You know, and we had Gegg started to play fullback, and I started to see traits, and I'm thinking, I'm going to play higher up the pitch. You know, to go and fulfill that. And I don't know if he remembers that, but putting him a wee bit higher, and he starts to score goals, and he thinks he's the best attacking midfield ever. Known Andy.
He filled in at fullback here last season, yeah.
And centre half
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, because he loved his football. You know, and even another young lad who I had a great affinity with him is Ian Chisholm. You know, people can always talk about whether it's lack of the abilities or whatever it's going to be, but he would give you absolutely everything. You know, and sometimes it's just that blend. And Chiz was a fantastic player for me, and also for the club and for everybody else, his teammates, because you knew that when he was on the pitch, you could rely on him doing everything and anything for you. And people could, you know, like this, never ever question his commitment and his application. He was first class, and that's what we tried to channel with all the players, regardless of what we've got, our commitment and application. And it was a plan, as you said, and the whole plan was year one, we want to be competitive, we want to be up the top of the league, we want to be up challenging. I would never set targets, because sometimes you set targets and goals, if you don't achieve them, then you're a failure. And that's around Scottish football for me, is that there's a fear of failure before of a bit of planning. And I know I had some critics of, your 3 to 5 year plan, Chapman, this, that and the next thing. But you've got to have a plan, you've got to have something, and realistic, tangible targets. You know, I knew that if I get to December, among things, I'll be reducing some of the players, I'll remove some of the quantity, and I'll try and get a bit of extra quality coming in. And we did that. And then even getting into the next summer, we were already starting to plan, well, who's next? What is the next kind of quality? But that also depends where you end up. And as we started to gain momentum towards the end of that season, we're thinking, we could catch Cowdenbeath here. But all we could do is win. And it was just the tag of, let's see how high we can finish. And I remember, you know, the guys with a good chat, a good meeting, sports psychologists come in, good communication, and we took the boys to Cameron House. The chairman says, let's go down for a night. It wasn't training. And then me understanding players and agreeing with the player, always trying to protect my players as best they can. So we get the night at Cameron House, they won the next. So if we win, do we come next week? I went, yeah. So all of a sudden we won, and we went back to Cameron House and won again. And we won again. So we had a few nights.
A costly run.
Yeah, you know, but great support. And it was good, we kind of laugh at that, but it was probably that wee night about just everything just clicked, that came together, because you know you're still trying to gel the team. As I said, great quality, great players to work with, they've been at great levels, but just trying to piece it together all the time, and whether it was an injury or suspension and chopping and changing as you had to do. But we finally got to that settled squad, and we finally got a good run, and the belief came into everybody that we're doing, and then all of a sudden we had a great run. And for me, the turning point, I remember we played Forfar away, coming back one night, midweek, Forfar. This was the real challenging game, and I knew, and I think Dick Campbell, and the good adversary Dick and all that, and I said, if we can come out of here, then I think we've got a chance, we can chase them right down. We won 2-0, and I remember coming down the road and I said, we've a chance now, Cowdenbeath will start to feel pressure. And then you had that vision of the trophy sitting in front of the team bus coming round the dressing room, coming round the road there and all that. And I said to the guys, just a wee vision, maybe we're a bit ahead of schedule, you know, but you're never ever going to knock success back, you know, and probably getting the success we got, sometimes the expectations change, you know. So year one was always about getting more competitive, getting the right squad in. I'd built the youth academy underneath it, set up the community foundation, so all of a sudden I'm putting the whole structure in place. You know, and it was quite a unique position that, as well as being the first team manager, you were the head of the youth, and then you were starting to head up the community and start to set up the charitable foundation of a club, which for me is so crucial. It's the heartbeat of any community, as a football club. So we started to put all that in place, and it was tough work. And lo and behold, going down to Annan, knowing that there's a 13 goal swing or something.
Something obscene like that.
You know, and I go back to speaking to Dick Campbell, who I get so much admiration for. And we were in the manager's room after we beat Forfar here, and he said, you'll go there. He says, don't worry, we'll take care of Cowdenbeath next week for you. And he says, have you won the title before? He said, in Dick's way, wee man, have you won the title before? I says, no. He says, it's good. He says, it's great, enjoy it. He says, because he's done it, you know, and I'll never forget that kind of support from people I've got so much respect for.
You touched obviously on a few players there that I was wanting to mention, and Ian Chisholm was absolutely one of them, because if you think of you, Chizzy's one of the players you'd think of, so there'd be maybe like Scott Chapman as well, in terms of guys who followed you about in your career. But I think we'd mentioned it, so it's before Chris's time watching Dumbarton. But Chizzy played, I'm fairly certain, every single outfield position for Dumbarton. He played at right back, he played at left back, he played at centre back, he played in centre mid, he played on both wings, and he played a few games at number 9 as well.
That sounds tiring.
Probably at the same time. But do you know what? And again, like myself, if you say it, the only position he hated was substitute. He didn't like being a sub, or worse than that, being in the stand. But you knew when you put Chiz on you were going to get everything from him. The ultimate enthusiast like myself, I describe myself as but someone who was totally committed. And you're right, you know, that he was like a jack of all who could do a job. And if only we could have found something, he could have been a master at something. But he was such an athlete. Technically, everybody, we all have limits in our abilities. But application-wise, and his tactical versatility was there. You know, and no matter where we played him, he would just give you everything. Did he understand the role 100%? No. But he did the job for the team, and he was absolutely one of the most important team players you could ever have in your sole squad of players.
And he was someone that I think you brought into Albion Rovers from Tower Hearts. Obviously, Guido had came from Harmony Row. Ben Gordon came from university football. Is that sort of hunger you see from guys who maybe came from, you know, I don't want to say that they think that they're not going to make it in the senior game, but maybe when you're playing 21s and you think, well, playing with my pals, I'm playing for a good team at this level, but I'm probably not going to step up. They've got that maybe wee extra bit of hunger.
It's an untapped market, especially at lower level clubs. You know, and I'm not being disrespectful to some of the clubs, you know, at the lower levels here, but it's certainly an untapped market. And we got to know all the players at that level. So I was just talking to Tommy out there, and when it got to that, you do your homework. I probably knew all the junior players, all the youth kids at academies, all the 21s, because that's where your bloodlines come from until we get our own academy up and running. And it was I've always said I would never ever be I call it playground pocket money. You know, guys come to the end of the career who, I'll be happy just to play, but that's not what the plan was. That's not where we want to be. This is not our ambitions. We need players who are as hungry as the club are and desperate for success. You know, you've got to have that desire to be successful. Now, what is success is always a question at low level clubs. What do you determine success to be? And sometimes just people look at championships and promotions, but you forget about the infrastructure underneath it and the progression of young players coming through, and the club's sustainability is the key thing as well. But I would never ever be a playground for pocket money players, I call them. But the players who did come, there was like Stevie Murray, like a Scott Chapman, who may have just started to find, I'm dropping down a bit, just to reinvigorate career. But you've got to give them that environment to showcase themselves again. And I think we did that with Scott at Albion Rovers. Stevie coming here was great, and the careers on. Even Ross Clark, you know, who probably was at that wee crossroads, what's next, because he was at Alloa and stuff, and said, look, come here and rekindle yourself, you know, and hopefully we did that from someone. But as I said there, I think going forward, again being steeped in development, the promotion of your own players, the growth of your own was great. And then Martin McNiff's, Tony Wallace's, Alan Cook's, Nicky Devlin's. You know, I spoke to the chairman there about there's, for the business side of the development plan as well, is that we've got to play some younger players, but sometimes you play younger players, the results won't go your way. Don't worry about it, because if I play them, they become valuable, we sell them, and it helps the business grow. So you had to look at all that, you know. And I thought the work of Charlie Devlin, John Joyce, Kenny McCormick, Stuart Moll, all these youth coaches, Davy Lydens, even Alan New did all the scouting and all that in the area, the buy-in for the Dumbarton Football Development League. Everybody's just started to buy in and go the same direction, and that was the pathway right into the first team. And you have to open that door. You have to have a manager who believes in the youth structure they put in place. I suppose I was fortunate, because as the director of youth and the manager, it was my choice, but it was my whole philosophy running right through the club. Even had a couple of arguments with myself about speaking to the director of youth and manager, is he ready? I don't know, is he ready? So, you know, so, but it was, but I said the support for all the guys I spoke about, my coaching team, and you've seen the fruits of that. Even Kieran Brannan's coming on later on as well, you know, and it was great to see some of these guys go and progress. And I can look at a couple of them now who've had a fantastic career in football, and again, thinking to the people that helped them start it, I hope they don't forget that, because one day they'll be sitting here, hopefully doing the same influence and guidance of other young players that come through as well.
That wee run towards the end of the season was absolutely phenomenal. I think club sent records for a few things, but 747 minutes without a clean sheet. Now, you've always been an attacking football sort of manager, an attacking player, but that side of the game as well. I mean, 747 minutes without conceding a goal, that must be a record that you're hugely proud of that team for.
Absolutely, yeah. You want to play open attacking football. You know, people, I wanted to play expansive football, I had the quality to do that, but who am I going to tell the players up the top of the pitch how to play? Where you go and have fun, you know. And whereas my defensive organisation, and it's a thing people maybe not see, but I always was so more focused on our defensive organisation in possession when we had the ball, because the transition's so quick and it changes. So as soon as that, I let the guys go and be yourselves. And I didn't have to worry about the guys, you know, but I just looked at how we were shaping, how we were protecting, just in case, you know. And then the qualities of the guys at the back, they marshalled everything well. And one thing I thought we became very good at was counter-attacking as well, because we absorbed a lot of pressure sometimes in games, but when you've got an out like Carcary or Stevie Murray can take the ball and go on amazing and, you know, create something from nothing. So we had an absolute brilliant blend, but my main focus, and I know it sounds silly, is I was really focused of our defensive organisation when we had the ball, you know, because once it turns over, we were all ready to start to break it down, so we could keep the attacking players doing what they're brilliant at. Because I think, you know, and I look at Ross Clark and even Scott Chapman's, we want to free these players up. I don't want them making runs in the box. We always call it make the forward runs with the handbrake on. I don't know if I can go or not. I wanted to free them up. Let them go and get in the box, get on, score goals. But don't worry about it, because I've got the protection behind you. So it's just your balance of the team to make that happen. And I think we did that really well.
You keep mentioning obviously that run at the end of the season, and the thing that I'm interested about in relation to this season is it feels like it's like the opposite in terms of the results. Like Sun started with such an amazing run at the start of the season, and you went on to win the title at the end. It's not really a question. It's just something that's been in my mind, and it just I think with the similarities with the two seasons, they're almost sort of roles reversed, but they could end up with the same outcome.
It doesn't matter as long as it's the same outcome.
Yeah.
Everybody plays, and I hope Stevie and the guys go and do that. You know, and I'm quite sure if you ask any coach, any manager, any player, you want to be up the top. You know, it's good to be. People talk about hunted or chased or whatever it's going to be. Sometimes you want to be hunted, but again, it's how you handle that. And then when you chase, if you're chasing teams, then it's all you can do is take care of your own business, and it doesn't matter what anybody else. If you go and take care of your own business, you win games. It doesn't matter whether you're being hunted or whether you're chasing. You can't do nothing about it. All you can control is your own game, and that was the mindset we put into the players. Let's just win, and whatever happens, happens. And then all of a sudden the gap closes. You go, oh, they'll start to feel the pressure more than us, because you don't want the guys to start to think, oh yeah, we're getting there, because as soon as you hit one bad result, it could just blow in your face.
So we've spoken about that this season. There have been a couple of bad results, and obviously Dumbarton have been at the top of the league for so long, but how would you feel being in Stevie's position at the moment? You mentioned, and I mean, obviously delighted, but you know, when you just mentioned it there, you have that result, and maybe a couple of players think, oh, you know, but you know,
that's important. The important part, and that you talk about the whole club. The club is, you know, I always talk about it's dead easy to be negative. I think I said that once, and people thought I was being very critical of people's intelligence, which I wasn't. Because if something doesn't go well, then everybody, panic stations. You forget about the good, and that's what happens. And it's just, I don't know if it's a cultural thing we have here in Scottish football or whatever it is. But as soon as it's not the result, well, first things first, I'll say you've no divine right to win a football game. That's the first thing. The next thing is, it's not the be all and end all, because it's how you deal with that. And then if there is a lot of negativity comes behind it, then that brings pressure, you know, and it's how you manage that, how you handle that. And if you're getting the players a bit anxious, then as a manager, coach, you've got to say, hey, forget how, and I think Stevie's done that really well, because they've bounced back quite a few times. I keep an eye on the results. He's done it brilliantly, and he's a good lad for that. He'll understand that himself. Trying to take, look guys, okay, it's a wee setback, but let's move on. Don't forget where we are, what we've done. You need the whole fan base, the whole community to understand that as well, that sometimes it won't go to plan on a Saturday. Sometimes you won't get the result you deserve, or maybe you do deserve that result, but it's realising what the big picture is, because how we react to the negative side of things, that's what causes the anxiety, that's what adds the pressure. Because everybody says, okay, wasn't great, didn't like it, you'll have your opinions, but let's draw a line under it, move on, and let's get right behind everybody again on Saturday. And I think Stevie's done that really well, and I hope that the fan base has done that to get right behind him, and hopefully that will be the case between now and the end of the season, because you're getting chased down, but you're still in the best position ever.
We'll touch a wee bit on that Annan game now, which I think is, for Dumbarton fans, for most Dumbarton fans, actually a very special day. For fans of my kind of age and generation, like that's one of my best memories. Like we had my granda down, my papa down, like the whole family there. I think Dumbarton probably outnumbered the Annan support. People were throwing about big inflatable bananas. It was just like as a 12-year-old, I think it's just like one of the best experiences
So
you
you're
can
only
get.
12 then?
Yeah.
Thanks for making me feel a little older.
It might have been 11 actually.
Anyway.
Anyway,
We'll stick to 12.
but so we'll stick with 12. That must have been one of the most special days of your career. But also, secondly, Peter Watson it was who I think ended that 747-minute run without conceding a goal. Who you then managed at Annan? Did you go particularly harsh on him for that?
No, you know, it's funny because I had Peter up at Albion Rovers as well, and the commitment and the desire of that young lad. He used to drive up to Albion Rovers from down in Annan where he stayed, and he drove up and down in 74 to his training and play for his Albion Rovers because it could draw potential, you know. And then I suppose when I went back through as the manager at Annan, they probably went, oh no, not him again. But anyway, so no, I think going back to that day, I know what went down, and you talk about the experience for everybody. And this is where I thought the club were all starting to come together, which was great. Fantastic, we won 6-0 out here, knowing, I think it was Elgin. I think Derek Carker was raging at me for taking him off after scoring 4 in the first half or something. So, you know, I wanted to stay on, but he done his job, you know, and that was it. So, you know, and I started to think, okay, it's a 13-goal swing, but I'm still cautious. You know, I'm like, no, don't take it for granted. You know, we want to win, we want to keep winning, we want to keep things going. You know, we don't want to lapse here. And I remember there was an evening where things happening, and one of the supporters, I think it was Ian, who had bid to be like a match day experience with us.
Ian McEwen, local PE teacher as well.
Ian, and I think we had a wee follow after later on somewhere online. But I remember Ian and to give him a match day experience that he'd bid for, and I thought that was brilliant. So I actually turned that day over to Ian, and he got to lead the team out, and a big day for me, but it's not, because I realised that how it meant to him, what it meant for him, and I think it was a wee bit nervous. Just come on, Ian, you're in doing the team talk with the players, and he's in the changing room and stuff. And then obviously when the teams were coming out, it was a bit of a gala, but I'm still thinking, wait a minute, it's not impossible to lose this in 13, and okay, let's make sure we don't, and we've not conceded goals for long enough, but if we don't, let's make sure we don't concede 7 or 8 goals, and they win by 7 or 8 goals. I was never settled. I'm never settled. You know, if I win 1-0, I want 2-0. If I win 8-0, I want 9-0. I want players to have that kind of mentality. It's never done till the ref throws you off the pitch, so it was never ever completed for me. But to do that and see the smile on Ian's face and give it to the fans who deserve it as much as the players as himself as well, because that's what it's about. And I thought that was a good day, and it was a special day. And also had the great fortune to go back to Annan, and had the best opportunity to thank Henry McClelland and all the board there properly for the way they treated us that day. It was just absolutely incredible, and that spoke a lot for the people at Annan. And then when obviously with Harry was the manager there, and when Harry moved on, obviously my position had changed here, and when Henry called about the job, it wasn't even a second thought, because I knew the people, and they were my type of people, and the people down there, and I thought, what a fantastic opportunity. I wanted to go down there and try and build Annan the way I'd started to build Dumbarton, and it was great to see them achieve where I'd set the plan to be, but I get taken out the driving seat, to be fair, but that's another story. But we'll not go near that. I want to go back to that.
That night, obviously, everyone came up to the stadium and there was like a real party there. Now, I'm hoping that Sean can put this on screen. I do have a picture of me from that night, which might make you feel slightly terrified, which hopefully at this stage Sean will be able to put on screen. I am the taller one in that picture,
the taller one,
to be fair.
Great. Well, and again, isn't that all it goes about? But you speak about Guido.
He gave me the trophy for that, and my dad said, "Do you want to get in the picture?" And he said, "No, just let the boys have it." So,
and that just speaks, because it was the fans, and I think we had that relationship with the fans. We had that rapport, and we recognised as the team, the players, and even the coaching staff, how important the fans were to us. And then I remember when Gordon got the trophy, we all had a wee chance. Yeah. Straight away he went and he gave it to the fans, and that's what it meant to him, and that's what he meant to them as well. So I'm not surprised that that with you yourself there. And you know, it was great memories. And I remember coming back down here, and it was quite an emotional moment for myself, because I was down here. Obviously, my wife and the boys and that were down, and then David Provert came and says, "There's a guy here. He's telling me he's your Uncle Alec." And from Uncle Alec's in Chapel Hall in Airdrie, you know. Now, what's he doing down here? And Aunt Marion wasn't very well. And lo and behold, he dragged me, and it was my Uncle Alec. And he says, "I'm here," he says, "because your dad would have been proud of you, you know." And I was quite emotional at the time, you know. He took care of Aunt Marion, made sure everyone was okay, and he drove all the way down, because he knew we were coming back here to see us, and that was quite an emotional thing. And it was great, and I think that just shows you that when you get success, it's everybody feels it. But all I would say to everybody, sometimes you might not get the success you want, but don't ever forget those feelings, because it's so important and it means so much to everybody.
Is that the proudest day of your managerial career, or your football career generally? You know, that day in Annan and what came after it that must have just been incredible.
It was great because you've seen the results of all your hard work. Your plans come to fruition, that people keep doubting you've got a plan, you need it. And more importantly for the young players, because you're trying to sell the project to them. We need them to buy in, and when you buy in and they see the reward, they got the rewards for their buy-in. And to me, I think I said to you earlier, guys, coaches and managers don't win anything. Players win games. Coaches and managers will lose the game because team selection tactics or something. There's always a problem. You know, and that happens, and you learn that, as I said. But to me, it was I get more satisfaction out of seeing all the players getting rewarded for coming to Dumbarton, for coming and buying into the plan we had for them. Not just individually, but collectively. And when you've seen that come to fruition, then that is a proud moment. You know, not just specifically for a manager, you've won a title, you know. Managers and coaches don't win anything. It's nice to be recognised, it's nice to be rewarded, but you never ever do that. This game's about players, and when players believe in you, you get more satisfaction, and that's more satisfaction than any wee medal or anything will do for me. It's great to see the players achieve and believe.
I like to throw in a wee curveball question at the end of these podcasts, and the one that sort of flicked into my mind here was, if you could take one player from that 2008-9 squad to be your teammate, be that in your time at Albion Rovers or at Dumbarton, a guy who maybe would have set up goals for you or done your running or, you know, covered you, you know, defensively, whatever. Which one player? Now this is, you've been put right on the spot here. Which one player would you pick? I'm on the spot because, from a selfish point of view, I would be jealous of Ross Clark, you know, because he's a midfield runner. I'd be jealous, but he was fantastic. I would have Stevie Murray, who would create opportunities all day long. I could have Derek Carker, who would go on the make my bad passes look good.
This is you just picking the 10 around you.
Do you know what? And I look at it, the guys that would free me up at the back. As I said, Ryan McStay, a technical player. Ross Forbes, Paddy Boyle, sweet left foot. You know, Geggs would make his runs. Chizzy would just fight anybody for me. You know, Guido would take care of me regardless of what happens, and Big Dave McHugh would just scare the life out of anybody. So all of a sudden, I don't think I could ever fit into a team that I had. You know, and I think...
It sounds like you wanted to play in that team.
The guys will tell you I tried to play at training every night, and they said you're the worst player ever. I tried to join in, and I just recognised where you were, and I kept trying to join in sometimes, and but they were just a fabulous group of boys, and I think it'd be unfair to who would I take to play with me, because I think you talk about trust and loyalty. I'm quite sure if we could go back and relive it, and knowing what we know now and how we go, how many would come with you? I would like to think they all would.
That seems like a perfect place to end it. Jim, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank
and
you.
I hopefully you prove a lucky charm, just like you did in your first game for as Dumbarton Bulls.
If I can, just Stevie and all the players and everybody else here at the club, I wish you every success end of the season, and stay positive, and I'm quite sure you'll get the title.